What? You came back after after 4 long videos covering this dense material? I honestly, I just kind of assumed you weren't going to come back, but here we are. Video number 5, working through the wasteland. Welcome to the Alyosha Society, where we're still pursuing truth and beauty and goodness through great literature. I was just thinking about this. You know, this poem is barely what, 12, 14 pages. We got 7 videos on it, and they're longer than normal, which means we're averaging 1 video for every 2 pages. It's thick, it's rich, it's dense. I know that. Okay, let's just get right to it. We've already done, I don't know, hours of prep and background and introduction. We've already gone through part 1, burial of the dead. And remember, that theme is very important. It brings to mind the 17 million deaths of World War I. It brings to mind a sense of hopelessness, decay. Remember the theme in the first section there, memory versus desire. We remember happier times, but it's unfulfilled. We desire for them. We long for them. There's this longing. And, this generation, the lost generation, they were called, World War, the folks living in the 1920s. And this is one of the reasons, some folks look at the 1920s and they say, oh, everyone was doing the Charleston and it was a big part of the roaring 20s. It was before the Great Depression. But, I think one theory there is, the culture was just using song and dance and Great Gatsby partying to numb the dullness and the psychological, mental, spiritual emptiness and pain that the culture was feeling at that time. We'll get into that a little bit in this section, but let's go ahead. It's a game of chess. That's the title of it. And what I want you to get out of the title, the game of chess, we'll talk about it a little bit later, is a game of chess. When you play a game of chess, you are strategizing against your opponent. You're supposed to. That's the way you play the game. You're not trying to help your opponent. You're trying to outsmart him or her. Now, what Eliot is considering in part 2 of The Wasteland is, okay, we've already looked at this heavy, deep, philosophical reality, dull roots and stony rubbish and all that. We already did all that. Now, in part 2, what does that mean in terms of how we interact with one another as human beings? And specifically, part 2, game of chess, male and female relationships. So, you've got the metaphysics. That's just a fancy word that means the philosophical perspective. Then you have the ethics. Your ethics is, how do you behave? How do you live? What's your value system? And so, your ethics kind of what kind of branch out of and spring from your metaphysics. What do you believe about spiritual things? And so that's what he's doing in a game of chess. So it's kind of a natural progression. So he's going to be dealing with male-female relationships. He's going to be dealing with couples. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to. Yeah. So let's go ahead and just take a quick look at some notes. And then I want to spend more time in discussion mode. I know I've been kind of keeping the videos where, it's just little teeny tiny me up in the corner. But so here we are. This is our outline of videos. This is video number 5. So we're doing part 2 of The Wasteland. Remember the whole outline. Always keep the forest in mind. And when we get down in the weeds, we won't get lost. We've already done Burial of the Dead. We're doing game of chess here, but a game of chess and fire sermon kind of go together, because game of chess is how do we behave now in this new modern reality in terms of married couples, fire sermon, unmarried couples. Okay, so a little bit of a distinction there. So here we go, game of chess. So we got 2 couples we're going to be like, and honestly, guys, it's really more specifically 2 females. two pictures of these two females, and how are they relating to this new reality? Both of the marriages we're looking at here are in terrible condition. One of them is a wealthy married couple, and some people believe that it looks, the language that Eliot uses here, it looks a whole and sounds a whole lot like his own not so great marriage to Vivian, but I don't know. I don't know how much of it's autobiographical. The other one is from a lower class. So we'll start, the first half of part 2 is the upper class couple, then the lower class. And, you know, at this point, the poem is going to almost have this feeling of starting to decay and disintegrate itself, as Eliot is trying to show us in many different ways and forms what modern culture has begun. So there you have it. I am going to do this. I'm going to come out of that mode, and it is just a little bit easier for me to talk like this. Okay, let's take a look. All right, now, right off the bat, the chair she sat in. Don't you get frustrated that, you know, sometimes don't you just feel like, what? She, you know, maybe some of you are more just like, what are you talking about? You know, your hair's all frazzled. But we actually know who the she is. Yeah, this is a quote from Shakespeare's play, Antony and Cleopatra. So he's talking about Cleopatra. Now, I'm going to not spend a lot of time on about 30 lines, because I don't think I need to kind of, you know, get into the minutiae and break this down line by line, because there's one big theme, I think. Notice, as this description of Cleopatra, notice the opulence, notice the glitz, the glitter, the wealth. She sat in, notice the chair she sat in, like a burnished throne, glowed on the marble, the glass held up by standard, the golden Cupidon peeped out, the 7-branched candelabra. This is describing the extreme, you know, this is like, you know, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos wealth. You know, this is billionaire wealth, wealth of the aristocracy, wealth of royalty. Moving right along, the glitter of her jewels, satin cases, vials of ivory. Okay, so this is a description of what it's like to live in that lifestyle. And this is all describing Cleopatra. And if you don't know the story of Antony and Cleopatra, I don't really have time to review the whole story here. Pause me, go look up a summary of the story of Antony and Cleopatra, and then come back. I'm assuming that at this point, most of you probably know enough about them. Now, before we get to the next sort of reference, because when we get down to about line 98, the change of Philomel, we're going to be looking at a totally different story. Okay, that's a reference to a different myth from Ovid's Metamorphosis. So we'll get to that. But what do I think he's doing here with this Antony and Cleopatra? Their love affair, it seems, you know, match made in heaven, again, Hollywood, glamour, glitz, but it's their love affair that actually leads to their demise, to their deaths, their downfall. And it seems like what Eliot's probably doing here is looking at that as a metaphor for modern man's disillusionment. Again, you can try all the glitz and glitter to cover it up, but you know, it's like putting lipstick on a pig, you know. And Eliot may be saying that here, you know, modern man, whatever he does to try to cover up that we are now a fragmented, broken wasteland, is like putting lipstick on a pig. You know, you can try to dress it up, but it's still a pig. And the other thing I was thinking here is, Cleopatra herself, and all this decadence. A lot of times we use whatever, our money, to buy us things, to numb the pain that we really feel deep inside. That is our reality. And that decadence and that decline of Western culture. So that's my take on what he's doing with this first section. So let's go on now. And in line 98, the change of Philomel by the barbarous king. Now, this is, again, from a story from the 1st century Roman poet, Ovid. And he wrote this book called Metamorphoses. And each chapter is just a different myth. And so we get a lot of our myths, or the details of some of our myths, from these writings of Ovid. In this particular story, a woman is raped, and then her tongue is, sorry, get the children away, this is going to get a little graphic. Her tongue is cut out so that she can't talk about it, so that she can't tell anybody, and her hands are chopped off, so that so she's basically, the rapist leaves her completely helpless and hopeless to do anything about it. Well, the gods then turn her, again, this is obviously just, it's a mythological story, turn her into a nightingale to give her the ability to sing. So when you see this part, the change of Philomel, the change is her transformation, her metamorphosis, thus the title of Ovid's work. So rudely forced, yet there the nightingale filled all the desert with inviolable voice. So the desert is the wasteland. So you can see the nightingale can sing, but the nightingale is still singing across a dry and barren land with inviolable voice. And still she cried, and still the world pursues. Memory and desire unfulfilled. Jug jug is, I think that's probably a reference to some sound that the nightingale is supposed to make. And other withered stumps, referring to the fact that her hands were chopped off. We're told of time. We're told upon the walls, staring forms leaned out, leaning, hushing the room enclosed. Footsteps shuffled on the stair, under the firelight, under the brush, spread out, and fiery points glowed, and towards then would be savagely still. So the nightingale can sing, but the nightingale sings across a barren land. Remember the image I gave you from in the previous video, Robin Williams. Guys, I'm telling you, if you don't know who Robin Williams is, you gotta, I don't know, look up a video and just look at his art, his talent. He's a guy that just had this ability to do all these impressions. He could do an amazing impression of anybody, but he could do them quickly and turn them off and on and off and on. And you got to see these different voices coming in, these different fragments. And that's just how I picture the poem. Now, next couple, starting with My Nerves. This is still referring to an upper class couple, generically speaking. She's apparently, maybe she's having a nervous breakdown. So my nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Now, this is a woman who is speaking to her husband with a longing and a desire for him to hear her, for him to love her, for him to listen and care. But what's the point? Again, in this new reality, relationships are now empty, and we're left with a Darwinian natural selection kind of ethics, not true heartfelt love, because how in the world could that exist in the wasteland? So speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never know what you're thinking. Think. I think we're in a rat's alley. Why? Because remember, the burial of the dead was the previous section. I mean, do you realize we just talked about burial of the dead? I mean, what do you think I'm thinking about? Where the dead men lost their bones. What is that noise? The wind under the door. What is that noise now? What is the wind doing? Nothing. Again, nothing. So they go from this sort of, everyday mundane kind of conversation to this deep philosophical reality. Nothing. Guys, there's nothing left. There's no hope to anything. It's all nihilism, meaninglessness, purposelessness. You know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? I remember those are pearls that were his eyes. Remember that reference back in part 1 to the drowned Phoenician sailor who is going to actually come up again. Are you alive or not? Is there nothing in your head but, that Shakespearean rag? Now, I'm not going to try to sing it. Okay. I'm not going to try to sing. And you can look it up. This is from a song that was, I think, written in 1912. It kind of had, that old whatever rhythm to it. But notice Shakespearean rag. What Eliot's doing here is he's taking something from common pop culture, something you hear on, like, turn your radio on now in your car and whatever you hear on the radio station, pop culture, and sort of meshing it in with high culture, Shakespeare. And the point he seems to be making is, in this new reality, what used to be sort of sacred and lofty and beautiful now is just kind of brought down to the land of meaninglessness and the realm of the mundane. So now Shakespeare is thrown into this pop song and put to kind of a hip beat. Ugh, that's yucky. That's yucky. It's so elegant, so intelligent. Now back to the couple again. What shall I do now? What shall I do? I shall rush out as I am and walk the street with my hair down. So what will we do tomorrow? The hot water at 10. And if it rains, a closed car at 4. And look at this. And we shall play a game of chess. That whole section I just read I think is meant to invoke a sense of routine. Just going through the motions of daily activities with a sense of emptiness and no direction, no target, no goal, no purpose. And what has marriage now been reduced to in the wasteland? A game of chess. How can I outsmart you? You see, I've been married for 30 years and I am a very imperfect husband, but I do know what the Bible says about the kind of husband I should be. It says I should love my wife the way Christ loves the church. It says I should put her first. It says I should serve her. It says that I should lay my own life down for her well-being and benefit. You see, guys, there's no place for that kind of relationship in a worldview where there's no God and there's meaninglessness and there's no purpose, and we're still reeling, trying to figure out how in the world did we just engage in a meaningless activity for 4 years that led to the deaths of 17 million people. You see, now, instead of marriage being what we see in Ephesians chapter 5, all that I just described to you, the loving and caring and laying down, now it's a game of chess. How can I outsmart you? How can I get what I want by tricking you and strategizing against you? It's terrible. Terrible. Now, I said we were going to have an upper class couple, then a lower class couple. Now, starting with when Lil's husband got demobbed, this is the lower class couple. How do we know that? Because the language changes on a dime and it goes to very slang, very lowbrow, very, sort of plebeian common man language. So what we have here, big break in part 2. So the first part of part 2 is the stereotypical wealthy couple. Now we have the lower class. So what we have is we have two women in a bar, a pub in London, and they're talking about this other woman. I presume she's their friend, and the other woman's name is Lil. So they're sitting in a pub. They're talking about Lil, and they're talking about the fact that Lil's husband is going to be coming home from the war. We know what war, and what, they're basically gossiping in a pub. And what's that going to look like when he comes home from the war? So here we go. When Lil's husband got demobbed, that means released from military service. I said, I didn't mince my words. I said to her myself, hurry up, please, it's time. Now, notice that's in caps, and I'm going to ignore those from here. I'm going to tell you what it is, but I'm going to ignore those from here on out. See, they're sitting in a pub, but it's super late at night, and that's the bar owner or bartender shouting out, okay, this voice is kind of coming in from the background. Hey, guys, we're closing up. Hurry up, please. It's time. It's time to close down the pub. Okay, so this voice just kind of shouts in every once in a while, but we're going to focus on the conversation. Albert is the husband who's coming home from war. Now, Albert's coming back. Make yourself a bit smart. Hey, fix yourself up. Your husband's going to want, to come home to a beautiful wife. He'll want to know what you've done with that money he gave you to get yourself some teeth. This is another reason we know that we're talking about poor individuals, because she's 31 years old. We learned that later, and she already has bad teeth. This would be just a dead giveaway of a person who's living in poverty because they haven't had the money to pay to have proper dental work. He did. I was there. You have them all out, Lil, and you get a nice set, he said. I swear I can't bear to look at you. And no more can't I said. And think of poor Albert. He's been in the army 4 years. He wants a good time. Probably referring to a sexual relationship when he gets back home. He'll want a good time, and if you don't give it to him, there's others will, I said. Oh, is there, she said. Something of that, I said. Now, again, all these I saids, this is one woman telling another woman about her conversation with Lil. That's why you have all that. Then I'll know who to think, she said. And give me a straight look. Okay, hurry up, please, it's time. If you don't like it, you can get on with it, I said. Others can pick and choose if you can, but if Albert makes off, it won't be for lack of telling. Now, if Albert is a faithful, loving, godly husband, he's not going to take off. He's going to love his wife, whether she looks beautiful or not. We learn later, too, that she has 5 children and that she was pregnant with another one. Okay, so her body, her body doesn't look like probably it used to look, when she was 19 or 20 or 21. So she's trying to take care physically after having given birth to 5 kids on the one hand. And this is honestly, this is like every mom, but then she's got, but I've got to be beautiful wife to my husband. It's a terrible, terrible tension. And to suggest that Albert would leave her brings us back to, well, yeah, in this new reality, in this modern world where our ethics would be based more on a materialistic Darwinian, then sure, he's going to leave her and go find somebody younger and prettier. You ought to be ashamed, I said, to look so antique. And her only 31. I can't help it, she said, pulling a long face. It's them pills I took to bring it off. So she had 5 kids. She was pregnant with another one. These pills are referring to pills that women would take to induce an abortion, to get rid of the child, to discontinue the pregnancy. I don't know how else to say it. She's had 5 already and nearly died of young George. So George was her 5th child, and she almost died giving birth to him. The chemist, that's a pharmacist, that's referring to a pharmacist, The chemist said it would be all right, but I've never been the same. You are a proper fool, I said. Well, if Albert won't leave you alone, there it is, I said. What'd you get married for if you don't want children? Again, wow, that what a worldview. You know, are we just meant to, like, you know, procreate and make children? And a materialistic worldview, then maybe so. Again, the bartender keeps, hurry up, please, it's time. Hurry up, please, it's time. Well, that Sunday Albert was home. They had a hot gammon. That's a word for a ham. So they had a ham for dinner, and they asked me into dinner to get the beauty of it hot. Hurry up, please. Hurry up, please. So the bartender's trying to rush them out. This woman is still telling her friend about Lil. And then it's over. Everyone now is understanding. The bartender's like, guys, get out of here. So everybody in the pub just starts saying, oh, okay, goodbye. And you hear these voices coming in. Good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night. Ta-ta. Good night. Good night. Now, put a line there, because the last line, it can be kind of deceptive here because it looks like it's just following along. The last line is totally separate, totally different. So we go from, again, this popular slang culture, two women sitting in a pub gossiping about another woman and blah, blah, blah. You know, Shakespearean, we had the Shakespearean rag earlier. Now, that abruptly, bam, the voice that comes in now is back to Shakespeare. Now we're back to high culture. This is a quote from Hamlet. Okay. And I don't have time to give all the background here, but good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night. Good night. This is, these are in the play, these are very powerful words that Ophelia, the character Ophelia, speaks right before she basically loses her mind, right before she goes crazy. Okay, so again, you've got Shakespearean rag. Then you've got this quote at the end after these two women are gossiping in a bar, but it's about a woman in Shakespeare who loses her mind. Guys, I could just start right there and go for another hour just on that. I won't. How is modern man not going to go mad? How is modern man not going to go crazy? Is it going to be a good night for post-World War I man? Well, this nihilism that just invades Western culture, it's not new. It's not new by any stretch, but this lost generation is going to have to figure out, how are they going to piece together some kind of idea that there's a meaning, that there's purpose, that there's a God who made us in his image. And yet we're still trying to put, and yet what just happened from 1914 to 1918? Okay, friends, like I said, part 2 is what do relationships look like now? Married couple. We'll be in the fire sermon in the next video, and we'll see part 3, and we'll see, all right, where does this go for the unmarried? Hope you're enjoying, or at least enjoying wrestling with and deciphering this dense poem. See you in the next one, guys.